Deducting.
Okay.
We're on.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council meeting Monday, June the 8th. And this meeting is for a number of purposes, but certainly for us to continue our budget review of the 2009-2010 tentative budget for the city of Murfreesboro. We have several departments to go through to kind of work our way through the balance of the budget today. And before I start going through those departments, is there any questions or any comments from the council members before we begin? All right. Seeing none, our first department for review will be the Building and Codes Department, and their budget is on page 16. Their salary schedule is on 72 and 73. Their revenues are on page 4, line numbers 20 through 27, and line 46. Any questions or comments on the Building and Codes Department at this time?
Mayor, I have one.
All right, Vice Mayor?
I guess, never mind. I'm good. I'm good with it. Never mind. I know what it is, but I know if it was in or out.
Right. The question was on the proposed reduction in the position, and I believe all of those have been deleted. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. As much as Mr. Griffith would like to get to the microphone, I haven't heard any questions for you. I know being first on the agenda is unusual for you, and we certainly wanted to take advantage and get you up there early, but I guess if there's no change orders.
Yeah, can we discuss road projects tonight, Mr. Mayor?
Maybe Broad Street? No, that's not his, is it?
No. We can make it.
I'm surprised any of us made it here with Broad Street under construction. All right, you have the Planning and Engineering Department then, 12 and 13 of their budget pages. The salaries on 67 through 69. The revenue page, number 4 again, revenue lines 31 and 41 for the Planning and Engineering Department.
Mayor, just a quick comment. As you see in the budget document, we did reassign some personnel in the Planning and Engineering Department. There are 3 GIS employees that we have recommended moving from the Planning and Engineering budget to the administration budget. That caused the Planning and Engineering budget to go down, but we've taken all 3 of those employees and budgeted for them in the general administration budget. That caused that budget to go up. Same number of employees, just budgeting them a different location. Likewise, Mr. Bratcher's comment about the position reductions, same comment as before. We addressed this last Thursday that we're suspending that recommendation. And additionally, there's one other employee currently budgeted in Planning and Engineering that we're moving to the proposed Transportation Department, which is the next item that we will take up. So same number of employees, we're just moving seats around a little bit.
Shuffle the seats.
So if we looked at, what would that number be to see what the difference was between this year and...
Well, there won't be any difference in salary because took the same salary and moved them from planning and engineering, if they were GIS employees, and moved them to general administration. And then all of the employees in traffic, Mr. Richardson and the traffic signal technicians, the traffic engineer, Mr. Balachandran, likewise, same salary, just moved to the transportation department. The dollars are the same.
Yeah, I'm just, if we're showing a $1.3, well, almost $1.4 million decrease in the budget from last year, what's the actual decrease if you were to?
I don't think we tracked it in one
Okay.
spot, but the corresponding line items for supplies and training and travel and
Went
so
over
forth
there.
also went over with
Okay.
that.
Any other questions or comments in reference to the planning and engineering department? If not, we'll go to transportation. Their budget's on page 14 and 15. Their salaries on 70 and 71. Their revenue is page 4, line 42.
Yeah. Mayor, again, just a brief introduction on the transportation department. As you know, Mr. Nugent left his employment with the city to go head up a transit system in Kansas. With Mr. Nugent's departure, caused us to take a look at how we were going to proceed with our transit department, Rover. And after considering how both our transit department is funded with federal and state grants, and then looking at the dollars expended on road projects that often include federal and state revenue, we saw an opportunity, given that overlap, to create a new department. It is not very often that we come to you to recommend the creation of a new city department, but in this case, we saw an opportunity where we had an employee with, I think, over 25 years' experience with the city, who is very familiar and conversant with the federal and state grant process to really streamline our operations. And it led us to recommend creation of the transportation department. It also, because of the dollars included, not only on the road projects, but our capital improvement plans, the road projects that the city funds out of our TML bond funds, an opportunity, we really think, to have one area that's completely over all of our transportation-related items, our roads, our capital improvement projects, our greenways, our bikeways, and our bus system. So we think this is going to be a more efficient way to track the dollars, to deliver service to the public, and so we are recommending the creation of this department.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from Mr. Lyons? I certainly want to congratulate Mr. Richardson on his stewardship with the city, and I consider this a promotion for him, and I appreciate all the efforts that he undertakes every day to deal with the variety of organizations who furnish not only funds but leadership and suggestions to the city on how our money ought to be spent when we get it, or how we ought to spend money when we ask for it. And he has certainly done an outstanding job, and I want to recognize Dana Richardson and congratulate you on being director of our new transportation department.
Mayor, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
This federal, in the budget under additional fixed assets, the federal money, is that secured? Do we have that, or?
No, you don't have it. You have to spend it to get reimbursed.
Okay.
The shelters and benches, though.
And some of these numbers are going to change. They're going to go up based on information we had from Mr. Nugent. This is how this was completed. Since then, Mr. Richardson's gone into it, and he has found out that these were understated, so they're going to go up. And on our sheet where we handed out the changes, the net change is $22,300. Mr. Nugent left off the local match, and we put that in. But that's the net change. But actually, the revenues will be higher and the expenses will be higher, but the only change is the match.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll go to the State Street Aid Fund, and their budget's on page 33. You'll notice those revenues come from state fuel tax allocation. We add money from our fund balance. There's some interest income and other income. Hopefully there might be a little bit more, but most of that is passed through except for that we use from fund balance. Any questions on State Street Aid Fund? Next, you have the Street Department. 22 and 23 are the budget page numbers. Their salary schedules on page 100 and 101. Their revenues, page 4, line 45. Any questions on the Street Department?
Mr. Lyons, the question I had on Street Department about Tennessee One Call being eliminated, will we handle that now, I guess, or who will?
Yes, sir. We're going to handle that internally, and that's something if we wanted to join back up with that program, we can do so at a moment's notice. But I think Mr. Templeton feels like, given what is happening out in the field, that we can accomplish that ourselves. Already we're getting the ability to locate these things ourselves, so we think we can do it without that expense.
Is that a function of our GIS system being that in-depth now?
Well, I think in part, but also, for the street department, it's, a lot of the storm sewer structures, which have some very visible evidence of where they're located at, so we don't feel like that one-call service is going to be something we're going to need for this budget year.
And again, how much is that going to save us, Mr. Lyons?
I think it was
17.5. $17,500.
I was going to say 20,000, but it's just under that.
Okay.
No, that's right. 20,619 is what we spent this year.
Is there any liability associated with that?
Nothing I'm aware of there, Greg.
Just don't mess up.
We issue right-of-way construction permits. When we first started, we wanted to be sure we could track people that were maybe not getting permits. So everybody normally does a one call. We get that through our office. We got it through the email. We get that. So that was the main reason we did it. Our storm drain systems are pretty tough. It's pretty hard to tear them up, and we've not had any problems in the past. So this thing kept getting more expensive every year because we pay so much for every call that we receive. So we thought we could try it, and if we find it doesn't work, we could sign back up tomorrow. It's a problem.
So the one call is pretty much, is it just a clearing service that people call in and then they reroute the calls to whichever city department? It's no new personnel. We still do the work as we normally did in the past.
Yeah.
We're just bypassing their call.
Yeah, we're just like the water, sewer, gas. They're calling us to, like if you were a contractor, you would call them and say, look, I'm going to be digging over here at 210 North Main Street. So they're going to call us. They're going to call water and sewer. They're going to call gas. And they have a database for us, too, so they know that what utilities we have in there. So they're going to locate them for us. But like I say, the storms are so tough that you have to really, not paying any attention to tear that up. So we really haven't responded. We've only used that system to track people not getting right-of-way permits.
What if the public calls Tennessee One Call? Will we still get that call from them, or how? Is the ball not going to be dropped somewhere?
We won't get the calls from anymore because we're no longer a subscriber if we choose to do that. Only the subscribers get the notifications. If we don't subscribe to this anymore, we won't get any more notifications. But the people we're dealing with, they're getting permits. We're not finding many, if any, offenders. And that was really the only purpose we did this. So like I say, we thought it's worth, if we can save $20,000 a year, whatever. It continues to go up because the more calls we get, the more this service costs us.
So I assume what will happen then is someone calls Tennessee One Call, they'll just be told their city doesn't participate in this program. And
The storm sewer system is not in the system. Okay? It's not in there.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
One question, Mayor. Mr. Templeton, can you elaborate on line 10 that shows a decrease of $24,100? And just give us some idea of where that decrease comes from.
What page is that?
23.
It's the one call and the training, and he's got some other miscellaneous, looks like.
Yeah.
Well, the bulk of it comes from the one call. 17.5 is the one call.
Right.
3,000 is training personnel, and 1,000 other miscellaneous.
Okay. So the 1,000 is just miscellaneous?
Yes, sir.
All right.
He underspent his budget on miscellaneous this year, $1,000, so he's not going to get it next year.
It's a cruel system.
It's a cruel system, but
but just.
yes. Well, he underspent last year. His whole department looks like about 6%, so thank you very much for your efforts, Mr. Templeton.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Any other questions on the street department? If not, we'll go to the fire department at this time, and their budget page numbers 20 and 21, their salary schedules 89 to 99, and their revenue is line 44 on page 4. Any questions on the fire department? You'll notice they underspent their budget on an estimated basis about $225,000 this year. I think part of that was some fuel savings and possibly some other dollar-saving events that they undertook as a department. So I want to appreciate the efforts of the fire department and what they do. Naturally, we expect you there all the time, and we see you out every time. We're very proud when we do see you, and thank you very much for your efforts during the Good Friday tornado and every day. Any questions on the fire department? Certainly, I'll take this opportunity to thank all our city departments, because every department worked hard during that terrible tornado event. And street department was out there in every way, making sure that we had things moved and around where we could get access to provide service. So I appreciate those efforts completely, and our solid waste department, police department, who we'll be looking at next, and all our departments. Any questions on the fire department?
On our federal grant money that we have in 06 and 07, 08, was that, we got 170 and then 385,000. Was that for the the pipes that we had to hook up to the fire trucks? Is that what that money was? 'Cause I know in 08, 09,
It's number 8 on page 21.
21, we're looking at 79, but we're not figuring any grant money in 09, 2010.
Do you remember how you spent your old grant money in 06, 07?
I think it was for the carbon monoxide pipes that hooked up to the trucks. I think that's how we did that, but I guess we'd have none that we're expecting in 09 and 2010.
I think we'll have to get you an answer on that one.
That's fine.
Any other questions on the fire department? If not, let's go to the police department at this time. Budgets on 18 and 19, and their salary schedule 75 to 88. The revenue numbers are 30, 37, and 43, each of those lines on page 4. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I've got several line items, but I'll just ask one at this time, see if there's any more. I guess it's on page 18, line item 32. How are we trimming that much out? What's the plan on that?
That covers the 16 officers that, or 16 or 18? 18 officers
18.
that we didn't hire.
Okay.
And if we are successful in receiving the grant, it will include them, clothing and equipment.
Okay. I was just concerned that was coming from existing personnel, and I was
No,
just
sir.
wondering how you could do that, but. I guess on page, I have one more question, Mayor, if I may. Page 19, be number 5 on the training of personnel. Was that the same thing? Same answer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That money that was budgeted last year included the training for 36, and so a big part of that savings came from there.
Okay.
And again, Chief, if we receive the grant to which Ms. Taylor referred, I assume there's training allotments that go back in just as with the clothing and equipment.
Yes,
Sort
sir.
of a package deal, I assume.
In part, there is, and the other part of that, I was looking here on the schedule. I believe we actually did project at some place uniforms for those if in fact they are funded. However, there's also some other grant funding that may be out there to help offset some of those costs if those are successful. I will tell you, they allocated $1 billion for those community policing hiring recovery program grants, and at last count they have $8.8 billion in requests. So it's very competitive, but we think we're in that mix.
Mr. McFarland, do you have another question?
I did, Chief. I know you had to make some tough choices this year, but what was the, I know we cut some money out of the DARE program. What was the?
I think basically, Mr. McFarland, we trimmed everywhere that we could without getting so far that we felt like it would cut services. A lot of the money that we've used in some of the DARE programming in the past helps purchase incentives and those kinds of things. There are some other funding sources that can assist with that, but none of the cuts that have been proposed would cut services or cause any change in what the children see in the classrooms.
I know we've kept that funding for 06 and 07 and 07, 08. If there's any way when we get towards the end to, and I don't want to say it's insignificant, but $10,000 in the size of the budget we've got, is there maybe try to work to find some way to put that back in there? I know that
If it were going to affect the program, we wouldn't have taken it out, but that $10,000, that would be, it would be money that would be nice to be spent if it needed to be spent.
Okay.
But it's for the handouts that they give. It doesn't take any personnel away. It won't affect any of the classroom hours. It's just.
Okay.
The integrity of the program remains solidly intact.
That's correct.
We're mainly talking about
Gifts.
keychains and
Yes.
things like that.
And they do get some donations from different people that they can use that money
Get that
as well.
back.
And they've got an inventory built up.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Other questions for Chief? Anything else regarding the police department? Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
They do a good job, Mayor.
Outstanding job. You have the drug fund on page 43. Are there any questions on the drug fund? You have the Judicial Department on page 17, salaries page 74, revenue, line 33 on page 4. Judicial Department. Any questions on the Judicial Department? If not, then the Legal Department, budget's on page 10, their salary schedules line is page 65, and their revenue numbers, line 33 on page 4. Any questions on the Legal Department? If not, on page 34 and 35, you have the Risk Management Fund. Salaries on page 104. Urban Environmental Department is on page 24 and 25, and their salaries are on page 102, and the revenue is line 47 on page 4. You need to work on your revenue. You're not carrying your load this holiday. Mr. Young, as you sit on that commission, I want you to take care of that, please.
I have some ideas how to increase some revenue.
He said it just don't grow on trees, Mayor.
Is that right?
Oh, it does. We're working on that.
What about 45? Is that an old grant that's expired on 45?
The Street Department service charges?
No.
Where?
Grant expense on urban environmental.
Oh. Well, I guess it was.
Looks like it. Can we get more of it?
Do you recall what your grant was for?
Yes, sir. It's for the Tennessee Roadscape grant, but
We just want to get her up here.
I see it's there, but it hadn't been spent. Is that right?
that's right. We've taken it out of the budget. If you recall, we made application for that grant back in 2006. By 2008, we still did not have a contract from the state. Basically, there was some internal issues with the state. It was kind of an ill-thought-out program. It was the first time for the state to allocate those monies. And we called and called and called, and it was just problematic. They could never really get it together, I guess, at the state level for that program. So that was one of the ways that I just thought we needed to cut that grant.
All right.
Ms. Holloway, was that the 840 interchange?
Yes, sir.
Grant money for that?
And the city's share was approximately $29,000. It was an 80-20 match. It's like a $145,000 grant. Of course, as Mr. Haley said, you have to put the money in your budget and spend it and then get reimbursed. So really, the city's share was about $29,000.
And we did spend the money?
No, we did not.
We did not.
We
And the state
just,
never allocated the money either.
well, that's right. The state, we just wrote the state a letter basically saying thank you, but no thank you, because they couldn't ever get a contract out. They had a lot of internal issues with that grant. So.
They never defined what the program was.
That's right. And originally, we had an application about this size. Actually, this is the application. We ended up getting an application and an addendum that was about twice this size. So it just, there's a lot of time and effort that go into these grants, and we didn't feel like it was worth it at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on urban environmental? Civic Plaza, page 26 for their budget and 103 for their salaries, and their revenue number is on page 5, line 4. Any questions on Civic Plaza? Certainly a benefit to this community, and I appreciate the foresight city staff had working with the county to provide that parking structure plus the rest of the plaza to the Line Ball Library, to the county, to the city. Personnel Department is on page 11, their budget and their salaries on page 66. Are there questions on the Personnel Department? If there are no questions on personnel, in the medical dental insurance program and in the back of the budget binder, I believe there's an addenda that speaks to that. Is there any information you want to share with us, Ms. Mahon, on that?
If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. This year, I think the rates came back very good, where trend normally is about 12%. Our increase is 7.24 overall, so I was really pleased with that. And it's based on utilization, and so that was good. In the Delta Dental, as you know, there's a $1,000 max on benefits, and this year they did. Our rates were less this year because, again, on utilization, people did not get as many braces and extra things that you might add due to the economy. I think they held off, so therefore our rates went down. And as an enhancement, we didn't change the plan, but they did offer a new preventive maintenance that would not include your x-rays and your cleanings in your $1,000. So if you had to have some other type of expensive restoration or implants or something like that, you could use that full $1,000. So your rates that I have presented to you do include that small enhancement.
All right. Any questions from Ms. Mahon on the medical and dental insurance as described in her May 14th letter, which is in the back of the budget? All right, if there are no questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to the Capital Improvement and Contingency Fund, and that is on page 58. Are there any questions or comments regarding the Capital Improvement and Contingency Fund? Any questions on capital improvement contingency? Does this reflect the increase in the bond revenues from the county in this particular
What was presented
section?
to you at May 15th, we did not have that then, but we have it now.
But it will go.
And we will make those changes.
Okay. All right, the Gateway Project Fund. Any questions or comments on the Gateway Project Fund, which is on the following page 59?
Does the maintenance come out of Miss Holloway's? I guess Miss Holloway's group maintains.
And Street Department is also doing some mowing over there, and that just comes out of their budget. You'll notice there's no debt service in the Gateway Project Fund. That is because we've got the land paid off.
All of the land is paid off.
Yes, sir.
And you have some land still for sale.
A little over 100 acres.
And I notice no sales are contemplated in the
I had 2 phone
budget.
calls today.
What?
I had 2 phone calls today.
Okay.
What are the numbers? We'll call.
Do we need to change agents?
No, I think our agent's done very well.
We don't need another commissioner.
Don't keep pushing our agents. Well, he's going to be busy doing other things.
Well, congratulations to staff on making that last payment to pay off the indebtedness, and that was a little early, I suspect.
Yes, sir. We are far ahead of the projections we made several times in terms of not only the acres sold, but the price sold per acre. And that's allowed us to see a very successful project with more to come.
Mr. Haley, just so
We
the public.
anticipated a 20-year payoff, about 11 years ahead of schedule.
Outstanding.
So, Mr. Haley, so the public would know the 100 acres that we have over there, what would be our market estimate right now on those 100 acres?
If the right businesses came into the community or employment expansion presented itself, and you needed that as an opportunity to attract that business industry here, you might want to give it away.
If somebody brought 600, 800 high-paying jobs in a project or 2 projects or 3 projects.
Or if you sold it, it could be easily $15, $20 million in value, maybe even considerably more depending on the lot location.
I think Mr. Gatton bought 100 acres for $25 million?
16 million.
16. No, he bought 330 for 16 and a half, and then he sold 100 for 25 million dollars.
Well done.
He didn't have a bad day either, did he?
The Gateway Project. I know all of us are relieved that that has turned out so very well, and my congratulations to city staff and those who worked long and hard. Vice Mayor, you went through the struggles on that also. I think all of us understood at one point that after the politics settled down, we had 400 acres that was off the tax rolls. The county wasn't getting anything for it. We had to do something with it, and this council's done a very good job with it, and I appreciate the effort.
Mr. Haley and staff done a great job on it.
That's forward thinking. Very forward.
New hospital, shopping, a lot of things. Not to mention a really attractive area.
A new interstate exit.
New Greenway Park.
Right. We can go on and on.
Yes, we can. All right, Gateway is, are there any questions or comments? TML loan funds are on page 60. You anticipate a borrowing of $55 million during this year?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
We've got the capital improvement plan, hoping to come to you in about the next 30 days.
And we have some additional funds that are still available from a borrowing from 2 years ago, is that right? Or just from last year, from the $45 million?
Last February.
Any questions on the TML loan funds? If not, then you have the miscellaneous general funds on page 30.
Mayor, the number for unforeseen, we've distributed to you the budget amendments we've discussed thus far. So the unforeseen number you see on line number 5 is currently at $971,272.
All right.
That's what they discussed this for.
The unforeseen, which is $600,000 on your tentative budget, is now $971,272. That's with adjustments, which
It's actually 500,000.
500 now, it's 9.
500.
And that's just, the 971 gets you to what you've discussed.
it's
thus far.
500 instead
Yeah.
of 600. It's
Yeah.
500.
So that means it's now a net decrease of about 400 and change, is that?
Increase
Increase, excuse me, I'm
471.
sorry, right.
And you have that list before you of the amendments and changes. All right. Any further questions on the miscellaneous and the general fund? You have the debt service fund on page 32.
Mayor, I would like to make the council aware, if you'll notice from line 20 through 34, that is a listing of each of the outstanding loans and the loan amounts that the city has at this time. All of those, you will note, are with the Tennessee Municipal League Bond Fund. We are in the process and we'll be bringing back to you in the next probably couple of weeks a resolution recommending that we shift some of these to a fixed rate amount. One of the institutions that we have used for credit purposes in the past, SunTrust, is in a position that causes us to need to convert the loans that they have from variable to fixed. The interest amount required, the anticipated interest amount required is covered in this budget, so it won't have any negative effect on you. But I wanted to make you aware of that. Also, as a side note, since the inception of the city's use of the bond fund, this city has saved over $62 million in interest cost because you've used that as your funding source. But wanted to make you aware that we will be coming to you with that resolution to shift some of this to a fixed rate.
All right, any other questions on the debt service fund? You have the general administrative budgets before you, page 8 and 9, and the salary schedule is on page 61 to 64. Any questions on general administrative expense? This might be a good time to consider, council members, the city manager to be's salary. Mr. Lyons has been selected, I believe, on August the 4th. I believe that's the day that he'll take over as city manager. Is that correct?
Monday, maybe the 3rd.
Or the
Maybe sometime earlier, the 3rd. Depending.
But, I'm sure the council was excited. I'm sure we were excited that Mr. Lyons accepted the position, and now it's time that we need to set a salary of some type for him. I would refer you, I don't know whether any of you have it with you, but I have it with me, the city's proposed, compensation classification plan that we worked through last July. It was presented to us on July the 1st, I believe. The ranges for city manager on July 1st of 2007, the market value of a city manager was $131,000 about. The estimated value on 7/1/09 in our compensation plan was $141,600 plus or minus. The ranges started at $109,000 through 4 or 5 years service and ended at $158,000 plus or minus. So at the market value in 2007 of $131,000 to the estimated market value of July 1st, 2009 at $141,600, I think gives us a meaningful range to consider for Mr. Lyons. And I would like to put that to the table for the council to consider at this time. My recommendation would be $140,000. But it's up to the council to set the salary, and whatever your wishes would be important to me as we consider, and I'm certainly it'll be important to our city manager to be and to our residents. But we do need to set a salary.
Mayor, if I've done my math correctly, the median is about 135 and change. I think I would put that alongside of your recommendation as being an excellent starting place. So I think we're all in the same neighborhood.
All right.
135. Is it a motion?
Well, I think we're on the table right now.
Any other comments or questions regarding the salary?
I think Mr. Edwards is probably correct in that what we have done in the past, I believe, with other department areas is if new hires have been made, we have looked, is that correct, Mr. Haley, to that midpoint range, depending upon level of experience and that sort of thing.
Council gave city manager the authority several years ago when you approved your pay study to, depending on the individual's educational background, experience, the typical matters that you would consider when you're hiring. You all gave me the authority to go up to the midpoint of the salary study.
Well, I think Mr. Lyons is probably worth considerably more than that. I think we would all acknowledge, but I think Mr. Edwards is I think that's a good train of thought to look at, the 135 mark.
Just to give everybody a feeling of kind of what the market is and where sister cities in Tennessee are. Johnson City has 56,000 population, and they are of city managers at $125,000. Columbia is $126,000. Collierville is $128,000. Bristol, $129,000. Cleveland, $136,000. Smyrna, $138,750. Germantown in West Tennessee, outside Memphis, $144,000. Franklin, $150,000. Kingsport, $152,000. And Brentwood, with a population of 35,000, has a city manager with a salary of $161,000. So I'll just give you those for information. So I think the public would be interested in knowing, obviously with the population size and with the budget size of Murfreesboro, I think any number that we come up with is going to be well within range, but it's certainly a position that demands time, stewardship, a great number of abilities, and the city manager is rewarded for having all of those things, and I certainly think Mr. Lyons can be there.
Mayor, I would defer to your judgment and wisdom, just solely on the fact that Mr. Lyons would be a good bit above median as far as his experience and qualifications, and we're talking about an amount there that's about a 3% difference than the median. So either way, we're right in the neighborhood, but I can live with 3% more if the rest of the council can.
Well, with 900-plus employees, I'm sure if we had been able to bring someone in from outside, we'd be having this discussion just the same way as we are now. So I leave it to your...
Well, I think, Mayor, I believe that we, got a fantastic hire, but also by saving taxpayer dollars and not going through the process of, I think Ms. Mahon had done several searches and showed that the range of the searches were going to be somewhere between $25,000 to $50,000 plus expenses for our search. And then I know that we're going to be bringing on, when Rob takes the lead, that we'll be also bringing on a assistant or deputy city manager that I also assume will not be making what Mr. Lyons is making now as the deputy city manager with 13 years experience, or we don't know what's necessarily out there yet, but there is some areas that we still have to discuss.
Mayor, I'll take your recommendation and make that a motion.
At $140,000.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second at $140,000 as salary for the city manager for the upcoming fiscal year. Any questions or comments on that motion? If not, call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Not so fast. We're not through yet. At some point, I would recommend that Mr. Haley, when he was hired, was a political choice. And certainly there's some politics enjoyed by the council in selecting a city manager. But our city manager has a degree in criminal justice, a master's in public administration. He's got a tremendous amount of background, not only serving other residents in other cities, but serving our city residents in Murfreesboro. And I would like to suggest to the council that because of the young age of Mr. Lyons' family, and Mr. Lyons is young, too, for that matter.
Everybody's young to you, Mayor.
Well, that's true. I would like to suggest that we come up with some type of severance agreement. I know Mr. Haley has worked without a contract. He has worked without a severance package. He's worked at the pleasure of the council and certainly has been an outstanding city manager. I would like to suggest, because of our new city manager's background and the market that we find for other city managers, that he be treated like other city managers with his background and with his education, that we come up with a severance agreement. And with the council's agreement, I would like to ask Ms. McGannon to come up with some document of some limited number of sections, if we can. I don't like lengthy documents, and that was no slam on you, Ms. McGannon. It's just that I don't like lengthy documents. But I wonder if the council would let me work with Mr. Lyons in trying to come up with a severance package that he feels is in line with the market. And then once we come up with something like that, give that to the council to review, just as we would review any contract for services from any outside engineering or other type of agency. And that would be subject to your suggestions and what you wanted to do over the time period of what any severance agreement that we would come up with. I certainly wouldn't speak for you. I'd just try to put together something with provisions, just like a contract that would be presented to us by city staff.
Mayor, this council nor councils in the past has ever dealt with this before, but this is the industry standard for professional managers, so it's in line with what other communities all over the country are doing. So even though it's new plowed ground for us, it's the way that it's a standard operating procedure throughout the professional community.
Any questions or comments on that proposal? That would be to ask Ms. McGannon to put together a severance agreement, discuss that with Mr. Lyons to see if he would be in agreement with it, and then bring it back to the council to see what the council's wishes were. Again, it would be very similar to any contract for outside services that we negotiate with anyone else. Then the council would have the ability to change it, add to, subtract from, do whatever else they wish to do. That's what I'd recommend to you.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of the mayor.
Second.
All right, motion second. Are there any comments, any questions? If not, call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
No.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
No.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. All right, I'll work with Ms. McGannon and Mr. Lyons, and we'll try to come up with some type of an agreement and present that to you and take a look at it. Thank you. Any other questions on general administration at this time? All right, you have the parking garage in front of you. Page 27 is their budget.
Mayor Bragg would like to point out to you, line 9, you'll notice that is showing a proposed decrease in expenditure over current expense.
Yes.
What we're in the process of doing on both levels of the garage would be to deactivate every other light fixture in the garage. We've tried this on a trial basis in the lower level to see if we received any complaints, any concerns. To my knowledge, I haven't had one citizen or employee contact me of concern. So we will proceed. We will need to proceed on the second level to do the same thing, and thereby reducing that electric cost. It costs about $110,000 a year to light this, just the garage area alone. So that should save quite a bit of money.
Yeah, I noticed it's already that way on the lower level at this point, and you anticipate about $20,000 a year savings or whatever.
Well, we did it in a trial area just to see if anybody got alarmed, had any questions, any concerns, and have had none. So.
And there may be other light fixtures available, and I'm sure we'll continue to look.
Looking at that, in fact, looking at the possibility of some grant money that might help us change the, not the fixture out itself, but the internal workings of the fixture to reduce the cost even further.
All right. Anything else on the parking garage? Non-property tax revenue, page 4 and 5. If you've had an opportunity to review that, I believe the total non-property tax is $53,700,000, plus or minus. Well, that's early. I'm sorry. It's budgeted $59 million, which is a decrease from last year.
About $1 million, almost $1 million, $750,000.
All right, any questions or comments on non-property tax revenue? What about on the property tax rate itself? On page 31, you see the computation. Thank you.
Yes.
No change in the property tax rate, Mayor. I believe that's the 15th consecutive year, but no tax rate increase.
All right. The tentative budget for the year is $96,800,000, roughly. The non-property tax revenue is about $59 million, which leaves an amount to be derived from other sources at $37,800,000, of which we're intending to take $4 million about from fund balance, which would leave us $33,800,000 to be derived from the tax rate, and the tax rate again this year would be suggested at 1.407 cents per $100 of assessed value. Any questions on our property tax rate? Mr. Haley, you've set a high standard for the new city manager, 15 years with no tax increase. I'm sure he's looking forward to matching you and probably exceeding you.
He'll do the best he can, but what he has to work with.
I've been taking notes.
He'll give us 100% of what he's got at the time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. At this time, then, we've completed the review of those individual department budgets and line items, and we'll hear from the city manager with regards to requested changes to the 2009-2010 tentative budget.
Mayor Bragg, members of council, you earlier approved the one adjustment by motion, that being the salary for the new city manager. Provided for you tonight on your desk are a list of the changes that you need to approve if you would take all the recommendations of staff, and that would, including the change that you made on the salary for the incoming city manager, change the unforeseen balance to approximately $933,415. So if you'll change the figure of $971,272, change that to $933,415, and again, that's approximate. Ms. Wright will give you a final figure certainly before your public hearing. But one motion, Mayor, would to approve the changes as outlined and handed out to you would make all the required changes needed to cover what you have previously discussed at your last meeting and the one tonight.
All right, you have before you an 8.5 by 14 sheet that lists the budget adjustments 2009, 2010. So if you've had an opportunity to review that, are there any questions regarding that listing
Mayor,
of proposed changes? Ms. Wright.
may I add, what's not on that list, because it does not affect unforeseen, is the new grant that John Callow mentioned he was going to get plus expenses. So if it's all right when you make that motion, they're a wash. Revenue equals expense. We'd like to add that in to his budget.
That's a community development grant.
Yes, sir. It was
Small business.
$1,740,710.
All right.
The neighborhood stabilization program.
Right.
All right.
Move we approve the recommendation, including the language suggested by Ms. Wright.
All right. The budget adjustments plus community development grant.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. All right, thank you. All right, the next line item we had was to consider recommendations to City Council with regards to the city manager's salary, and I believe we have done that. Thank you. Consider now adopting a resolution regarding the borough's compensation study and pay plan and regarding Section 1011 longevity pay of the employee handbook. Ms. McGannon?
Mayor and members of the council, you had in your packet a resolution that, as I explained in the cover letter, I believe is appropriate for the council to adopt before adopting the budget. It tries to address the fact that it is the council's prerogative each year in setting the budget to set what the salaries will be for every city employee, and that it has not, through its past adoption and reliance on the borough's compensation plan, adopted a mandatory increase for any employee. Similarly, it seeks to address the fact that in the budget that has been proposed to you, longevity is frozen so that the current fiscal year of service is not considered in the longevity pay provisions that are reflected in the budget. I make that recommendation to you for the reasons set out in the resolution. Happy to read those if any member of the council wishes that to be done. But I believe it is appropriate to do so to prevent any legal confusion about what the status of either the pay plan or the longevity system that we have in the employee handbook is as regards this or future budgets.
All right, any questions of Ms. McGannon on this resolution? I appreciate Ms. McGannon bringing this to us. I think it's worthwhile. Certainly, I think it puts us on a sound footing, and I would recommend it to you.
Mayor, I move we adopt the resolution.
Second.
All right, a motion and second. Any questions regarding this resolution? If not, call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time we'll adopt the City of Murfreesboro 2009-2010 tentative budget at the proposed tax rate. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time we should schedule a public hearing to consider the City of Murfreesboro 2009-2010 tentative budget, and I would recommend that we use the date June 25th, if possible, for our public hearing, if that would meet everyone else's wishes. Ms. McGannon, would that be all right?
Yes, sir, that would be fine.
Okay. We do have a public hearing, I believe, next week, but I will not be in attendance, and I apologize for that. But all right. Any thoughts on June 25th?
Is that a Thursday night?
It's a Thursday.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. So would I be correct that we would not need a deferral? Thank you. Consider for passage now on second reading an ordinance, the tax rate ordinance.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Consider now for passage on second reading an ordinance, the appropriations ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Consider now for passage on second reading an ordinance to annex an area located along Charnot Lane and to adopt for the same a plan of services.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider for passage on second reading an ordinance to annex an area located along Manchester Highway and to adopt for the same a plan of services.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider for passage on second reading an ordinance to amend 183.33 acres zone planned residential development PRD district located along Fortress Boulevard.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider for passage on second reading an ordinance amending Chapter 33 Waters and Sewers of the Murfreesboro City Code, Section 33-1, 2, and 51, dealing with sewer rates, fees, and charges.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider for passage on second reading an ordinance amending Chapter 33 Waters and Sewers, Article 2, Cross Connection Control Program of the Murfreesboro City Code, Sections 33-18, 19, and 21, dealing with hazards.
Move for passage. Second reading.
Second.
Thank you, truly. Thank you. Call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider any beer permit applications.
We don't have any tonight.
There are none. You have before you a list of bills to be suggested for payment. Are there any questions on the bills?
Pay the bills.
Second.
Motion and second to pay the bills. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider any other business from staff or the council to come before the council. Mr. Haley?
Mayor Bragg, members of the council, I placed on your desk tonight prior to the meeting my recommendations for appointment to the Water and Sewer Board. If council would concur, would reappoint Sandra Trail for her term to run through June 30th, 2010. Dr. Alphonse Carter Jr. term to run through June 30th, 2011. Clay Beach, June 30th, 2012. Kathy Nobles, June 30th, 2013. John R. Santamore, June 30th, 2013. And a new appointment, Mr. Blake Smith, and the acknowledgement of ethical standards policy is attached and signed by Mr. Smith, whose term would run through June 30th, 2012. If council would accept my recommendation.
All right, you have these recommendations of the city manager as to appointments to the Murfreesboro Water and Sewer Board. What are your wishes?
Mayor, I move we approve Mr. Haley's recommendation.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Is there any other business to come before the council at this time? Let me say this has been, I hope, a fruitful process for us to go through the budget this year. As we look at a budget each year, it's kind of a roadmap of what we want to do for the coming year, and I congratulate the council on being forthright about what their wishes were and what they wanted to do, and I also certainly acknowledge all the work of city staff and each of the department heads, many of whom are here tonight, and I really do appreciate the effort that you have put into it to, number one, keep our tax rate the way it is, number two, to provide the services that you do to our residents and to our businesses and to our visitors. I know it's not easy, but I thank you very much for your efforts and certainly for the way you are stewards of the city's tax dollars and the way you present yourself to the public. We don't always get to be the good guy. We're not always the bad person, but we always are out on the front line every day, and I appreciate your efforts, and I wish you would tell all of your employees how much this council is proud of them, how much we enjoy working with them, what a pleasure it is to be a part of this city and its organization, and we look forward to another great year with the city of Murfreesboro. Thank you all very much. If there are no other comments or questions, you're adjourned.